Holy Spirit, may this be an opportune time for you in our lives, for your presence to take root and grow, for your light to shine more brightly from within us. Amen. So this morning, I kind of have two sermons. And don't be alarmed, I don't intend to add our missing hour onto this service. The hour's gone, we can't get it back. Because I had just two clear ideas, which is unusual, of a sermon that I could do based on these readings. But both of them were relatively short. Like I feel like I could get from point A to point B pretty quickly. And so what I'm going to try to do is have like part one and part two. And I don't think it'll be longer than normal. But if it just starts going crazy, just like Kevin, just yeah. Because I can do the other one next week and just not worry about next week. So part one, name the devil. Poppy has been asking me a lot in the past few months. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, she started asking me, what do angels look like? Right? What do devils look like? What are they like? Do they like each other? Do they fight? Do they get into arguments? Or do they get along? And eventually I put together that what was happening is, for some reason, she and a few of her friends were like playing angels and devils. And they were drawing pictures of them, they were talking about them. And they had these really clear ideas of what they were like. Like her questions were trick questions. She would ask me what they're like, and I'd say, she's like, no, look at this. So Poppy was asking all these questions, and she was wondering about things. And then her friend Jordan had her own view on devils, because Jordan, part of her family is from India. And so in Hinduism, in case you don't know, demons or devils can be helpful. Like a demon in Hinduism could be like your scary friend who is tough looking and can scare off a worse threat over here. Kind of like a spiritual bouncer. And so they're not even necessarily evil. So you might ask a demon for help with something if you're a practitioner of a form of Hinduism. And so for Jordan, she's like, well, I want to be a devil because devils are great. Devils are really helpful, they're cool. I was like, I'm not sure about that. And then their friend Anna is like, well, you can't be a Christian if you like devils. You have to like angels. If you like devils, then you hate God. She's very clear on her theology. Because what they're doing is kind of having this theological discussion about angels and devils and demons. And it's weird to have this conversation with a 7-year-old who has such clear ideas of what they're like. So technically, if you're wondering, there aren't multiple devils, there's just one devil, the devil. And then there are multiple demons. If you ever have a conversation with a 7-year-old and set them straight, you can have that in the back burner. One devil, multiple demons, multiple angels. If your question is what they're like or what they look like, that's a whole other thing. But on this issue of the devil, of demons, because they feature prominently in the New Testament. Like in our story today, Jesus is tempted by the devil. And they have a whole conversation, they go back and forth, it's sort of a famous exchange. And one of Jesus' main capabilities that prove to people he's important is he can drive out demons from people. Like demons even speak to him a couple times in the Gospels. They feature prominently in the Gospels and in the early church. And so I don't know where you stand on the whole issue of angels, the devil, and demons. Based on my experience, I imagine there are some people in the room today who believe strongly that they are real beings that have intentions and intervene in the world and do things for good or for evil. There are other people who might think that those are names that people give to impersonal forces that have an effect in our life, but that those impersonal forces are real and they can really, have an impact. Other people probably think that angels and the devil and demons are metaphors, or they're ways that ancient people describe their experiences. We might describe them differently now. Like we might say mental illness. In the past, they might say demon possession. It's kind of different words for the same experience. Other people in the room probably think it's all just unhelpful superstition, and they're hoping that part 2 of this sermon is better than part 1. And I imagine there's all these are represented in the room, and I'm not going to convince you one way or another. I do want to show how it can be very helpful to have this idea of an externalized personal evil, even in our lives, kind of regardless of what we think about the question of devils, demons, and so on. Like, have you ever said or done something you never thought you'd say or do, and kind of horrified yourself? Or have you ever, like on video or in person, seen a crowd of people suddenly turn really ugly? And the people in that crowd, as a group, are willing to do things the individuals might not be willing to do. And they're taken over by something. Mob mentality, whatever you want to call it. Something happens, and the timbre of the group changes. Or have you ever met someone who just everything bad seems to happen to them? Just over and over again. And like bad luck doesn't quite explain it. And if the person told you that they're cursed, you might start to believe it. Like we have experiences that are hard to explain. And we don't have to go to these extremes to find something. I have a good example. So last year, I'm part of a nonprofit, and every year we put on a game convention as a fundraiser. And one of the events we had was a game designers panel, and I was the moderator of that panel, because I'm a nerd and I think moderating panels is fun. So we had these game designers, and afterwards we were kind of talking, and one of them, we got to talking about imposter syndrome. It's this thing that creative people get, where you just get this voice in the back of your head that's just like telling you, no one really likes what you make. You have no talent, you have no ability. Your friends buy your books because they like you, they're food but you're not really producing anything of value. You're wasting your life. You know, you should have been an electrician like your dad told you, all that kind of stuff, right? Or that voice in the back of the head. And he was talking about how his therapist gave him really good advice I've heard before, but I like the way he put it. His therapist said, you should take this voice inside of you. It's in the back that's telling you you're not good enough, that everything you make is garbage. Take this voice, and first off, does it have a name? He was like, no, what do you mean? It's okay, give that voice a name. And pick a name that you don't like. Either it's someone by that name bothers you, or it's just a name that sounds weird, whatever. I think the name he picked was Stanley. So I apologize to any Stanleys. You can pick your own name if you do this. So you take this inner voice, and not just artists and creative people have it. I think everyone has this voice to some degree. I assume it's not just me. It's just in the background telling you you're not good enough. Give this voice a name. And then when that voice starts up on you, you just turn to it and you say, shut up, Stanley! And sometimes it does. And what that does is it distances you from that voice. So that voice doesn't have a name. It can sound like God's voice speaking from on high. You are garbage. And it has no name. That voice must be coming from inside. Or the voice you could confuse it for like your inner intuition and your sense of yourself. Like your deep insight into yourself that you just had is that nothing you make will ever matter. It's not true. Why would you say that to yourself? That's awful. Or if it's an unnamed voice, it can start to sound like a really critical parent. And suddenly you're pulled back to being a little kid and being criticized, and you can't say anything back, and you can't do anything about it, and you're never good enough. So he was like, just name the voice, and when you hear the voice start in on you, just tell it to shut up. and use its name that you gave it, and it works. Not all the time, but I mean, at least when you say "shut up, Stanley," you're doing something, to push back. When we name the voice, it loses some power over us. If you look at the ratio, I don't know what your inner dialogue is like, but compare the number of critical things you say to yourself with the number of helpful and supportive things you say to yourself. And let's call that a ratio. Maybe it's one good thing for every 10 bad things. Or it's one good thing for every 100 bad things. Or one good thing for every 1,000 bad things. Or whatever. Maybe you're super healthy and it's 1 for 1. That's probably unusual. That'd be amazing. And think about how you would never say that to someone else. And if someone else came and said those horrible things to you, you would probably not put up with that, I hope. You would clearly name that as abusive and harmful and get that person out of your life. And so the insight this person shared with us was just call that person Stanley, and that's the first step to getting them out of your life, or whatever name you want to pick. For the authors of the Bible, we cannot possibly know what their inner life was like. When they talk about demon possession, when they talk about Jesus was visited by the devil, we cannot possibly know exactly what was happening. We cannot know what a video camera would have caught if it was pointed at Jesus in the desert fasting. Would it have caught him and another person arguing? Would it have caught him talking to himself? Would it have caught him with his eyes closed and lips moving? We cannot know that. That is unknowable. But we can look at our own inner lives, and we can name the unnamed things within us. And just like with a demon, say for example, Legion from the New Testament, just like with a demon, when we name it, it can be a first step to casting it out. Part 2. What do you know about it? A friend of mine is in a tremendous life crisis. And he lives in Missouri, which is far away, obviously, so I can't talk to him face to face. I have to talk to him over the phone or via text. And talking to him is like what I'd imagine talking to a shell-shocked person would be like. Talking to him is like talking to someone who's wandering around, staggering around in a fog. And he's just lost. He doesn't have access to his usual capabilities, to the normal wisdom that he has about himself and other people, his life experience. He can't formulate a plan. He struggles to articulate things. Like he's in such a crisis right now that it's stripped away a lot of his capacity. He's running at 20%. And it's worrying to have conversations with him because he's like a different person. It's like he was hit in the head, and he needs help. The crisis took out a lot of what he's capable of as a person. And in interacting with him, it's led me to kind of reflect on the fact that that's something that crisis does. When we're in a crisis, we lose our capacities. Like you can talk about this in terms of neuroscience. There are sections of the brain that are dependent, that are focused on planning for the future and slowing down and thinking things through, and those parts shut down. And the parts that light up are the parts that are involved with freaking out and running away from predators. And so you literally, when you're in a crisis, lose some of your capability. And so maybe you might have the sort of feeling where you're in a fog, you can't make decisions, or you can't move forward, you can't figure out what's going on to take the next step. And so what happens when we lose our capabilities like that, when we don't have access to what we could normally have access to, we fall back on what we know by heart. We fall back on the really simple, consistent things inside of us. The deep grooves that have been carved over time, like a deep riverbed, like a canyon. You won't see the little rivers, little rivulets, you'll see the canyon. And that's what you'll have, is the simple, deep things will be what's left. And so that simple, deep thing could be this inner voice. This, what I would say, is a satanic inner voice telling us we're not good enough. We are unlovable. Things are never going to get better. If we've been listening to this voice a lot, and this voice has a lot of power, that's what we fall back on. That's part of what's happening with my friend, I think. He's falling back on that inner critical voice because he doesn't have the resources to fight it off. Right? He hasn't the resources to do almost anything. Or, in the midst of a crisis like that, we could fall back on something else, which we know by heart in a deep way. Memorization, rote memorization, is not a good way to learn. And it's not a good way to come to understand the topic. It just isn't. You lose all the delicious depth and nuance and context that I find so interesting, that actually helps you connect ideas to other ideas. Rote memorization is not an effective way to learn something. But in a crisis, you don't have the energy for the delicious nuance and the depth and the context. You don't have access to that anymore. You can be stripped down to just what you know by heart. I think we can see this happening with Jesus. When he is in the desert, he is tempted by the devil, whatever form that would take if a camera was on him at the time. He's tempted by the devil with passages from Scripture. And with the idea, well, you're the King of Kings, well then behave like a king, have some kingdoms, right? And what he has to do is, he's been starving for 40 days, he's exhausted, he's hot, he's thirsty. This isn't the first time the devil's come to him, it's just the one that we have. He falls back on what he knows by heart. There isn't time for a sermon, there isn't time for a whole, he can't give a whole lecture. He just falls back on something that he knows by heart, that he learned as a little kid, reciting out of the Torah. And he falls back on these texts, and this is what shows him the way out of what's happening to him. Because he doesn't have the strength to go full Jesus on things and have a long explanation. All he can muster is the strength to just give a counter example, a counter scripture, to go against what the devil is trying to accomplish. And this idea of not having any time for nuance or time for a sermon or a lecture or a lot of interconnection is how we are in crisis. It occurred to me. That we don't have time for long, complicated, nuanced answers. We don't have all of our capacities. All we're going to do, like it or not, is fall back on what we know by heart. So, did everyone get a handout this morning when you came in? Okay, cool. Those handouts have just a list of passages that I picked. Those aren't all the ones that I would pick. I actually cut a bunch of them so I could fit 3 of them on a page so I can save paper. But that's how I think sometimes. But this could be a starting point. They're all short. They're entirely shorn of their context. There's no nuance or history behind them. They're just a thing. Some of you have already memorized some passages of Scripture in your life. Some of you maybe haven't. But this could be a way to continue to begin this process as almost preparation for a crisis when all the more juicy, delicious, complicated things won't be available to us. And we're going to have to fall back on what we know. And I think that also means naming the inner voice. That I know in my crises in life, I have fallen back on that inner voice more often than maybe anything else. That could be like the main struggle in the midst of the crisis is getting Stanley to shut up so that I can deal with things, because that voice becomes so loud. And a way to cast that voice out is to name it. To understand that it's not God, and it's not your parents, and it's not your inner wisdom, it's just a stupid voice that is trying to hurt you. And you're better off without that. And then in that voice's place, instead of that inner voice, we can add the inner voice of Scripture. So that that's the thing on repeat in the midst of a crisis when we don't have access to all that we could normally do. Because in a crisis, when it comes to a crisis in life, I think the only thing we're actually going to have is what we know by heart.